Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Amir Jaffrey. I am the Chief Technology Officer at EBEX. And today we're going to discuss how to protect your critical systems and data with Azure. A little bit about EBEX first. We are one of the leading business solutions partners in the UK, having won the Dynamics Reseller of the Year for 5 of the last 6 years, and also a member of Microsoft's Inner Circle and with all the gold accreditations as you can imagine. One of the key things about EBEX is the fact that we are focused on delivering the total business solution for our customers. So instead of focusing on a particular product area, we focus on the entire solution, all the way from the functional development of the solution to managing and hosting the solution for our customers. And our solutions vary from dynamic solutions to like NAV, AX, and CRM to business intelligence, mobility, field service, Office 365. What I'm going to talk about today with you is Azure and managed services on top of Azure and how we can help our customers there. Most of the customers we work with now want a fully packaged solution. So whether they're looking at hosting the solutions in the cloud or they're looking at protecting the solutions in the cloud, they not only want the underlying technology from Microsoft, but they're looking for a partner to help manage and maintain that, and almost more importantly, make sure that they are properly protected as they go through. What we're going to cover today are a few things. Firstly, we'll talk about the impact of disruptions. So just we'll get some numbers, share some numbers with you. What does the disruption really mean for your business, for the reputation of your business, and obviously financially as well? We'll discuss how EBEX can help and the kinds of offerings we've created around these disruptions, and really more the design principles we use to build on top of these services. We'll discuss backup challenges and disaster recovery challenges as the two key scenarios when it comes to protecting your data. You want to know that there is backups of critical data in multiple locations. We'll talk about that. And you also want to have a strategy on if there is a disaster in your site and you are for whatever reason unable to bring up your application and services and systems on your premises, where can you bring them up? And then we'll just close the session with a summary and some recommended next steps. So impacts of disruptions. Studies have shown that organizations can have up to 4 disruptions in a year, and the costs are absolutely staggering, $1.5 million per hour. So if we look at disruptions spanning a day or two, this is quite a serious financial impact here. Now, there are also longer lasting impacts for disruptions which last for a longer period, and these include compliance and probably most importantly for a lot of our customers, reputation in the market. If your customers can't trust you to be available for them, or your internal users can't trust you to be available for them, then really does affect your ability to do business. Now, another kind of disruption, sort of not explicitly covered here, but I do want to talk about disruptions around data. So if you have issues around data corruption or anything else, and you want to be able to recover to any point in time based on your backup and retention policy, and typically recovering from tape or other media takes quite a while. So really, this is sort of why we invested in these services, because the disruptions have quite a significant impact, both financially and from a reputational perspective. What can we do for you? So we can help safeguard your data and applications. That's basically the principle we've built our solutions on. Safeguard your data, protect your applications. What we do is we've built Azure-based backup and disaster recovery solutions. The idea being that if there ever is a disruption, we can minimize the impact of that disruption. We can essentially get you back and running as soon as possible. So restore or recover within minutes, not within hours or days, which a lot of the solutions we currently see in the market, that's what they offer. Now, these are complex issues. Disaster recovery specifically is quite a complex issue. And from a backup perspective, it is rather complicated to understand the appropriate retention for your business and then do validation around that as well. So we handle all that complexity for you. So the backup and disaster recovery is just a service as far as you're concerned. And then you can focus on your business priorities and really the core of your business, not having to worry about infrastructure backup and infrastructure disaster recovery. Now, we talk about cloud, we talk about Azure, but it doesn't mean that the solutions we develop aren't applicable to on-premises or hybrid environments as well. So the great thing about the Azure solutions around backup and disaster recovery, which we'll talk about today, is they are very focused on allowing on-premises customers to use Azure as a disaster recovery site. So you can have the data on-premises or in the cloud, but you would manage it the same way. So most of our customers in their cloud evolution are running in hybrid mode. So they have some services and applications on premises, and then they'll have a set of services and applications in the cloud. And the what we're talking about here is all the offerings we're going to cover will actually support both on-premises and cloud, and obviously the hybrid scenario, which really is the more common scenario for most of our customers. So how do we design these solutions? What kind of principles do we use to address these challenges? The first principle, and the one which is most important to our customers, is we constantly validate the processes and the backups we take. So we perform quarterly test restores and failovers in isolation. We validate that the data you have is valid and available for a restore. And we also validate the processes we've put in place with you in order to recover are actually valid. It's not very useful having a backup or a failover process if you've never actually tested it. And the first time you do is when a disaster actually happens, because at that time you're massively exposed. And any issues on either process or data can be very difficult to recover from. The second aspect of a solution of such critical nature, obviously, is reliability. So we built a solution on Azure Backup and Azure Site Recovery services from Microsoft, and they've been used by various companies worldwide to protect business critical data and applications. So you know you're in safe hands. Now, the other aspect is around compliance. You want to be able to test your processes without exposing the data in a manner which would get you out of compliance. So that is why we always test all of our of our workloads, whether it's backup or restore workloads, in isolation. So to make sure that you're not sending it off to a different site, for example, or outside of your data center, for example. So we keep everything self-contained for you, so your data is essentially never leaving your premises. We can work with large data sets. Azure scalability on data is absolutely fantastic. So no matter how much data you're talking about, and no matter how many applications you want to protect, Azure will be able to scale for you. And when it comes to what we specifically do for you is we manage the complexity. You want to focus on your high impact activities. You want to focus on the areas you bring the most value to your customers, and you let us focus on complicated scenarios like disaster recovery. So let's talk about backup. The principles of the backup solution is that it has to be scalable, it has to be reliable, and the data absolutely has to be encrypted. So no questions about that. So if you look on the right side of the screen, there's a graph which talks about how data grows exponentially over time, about 50 to 60% annually. But what's interesting about that is that the working set of the data, which is the data you basically need, you basically work with, doesn't grow at anything close to that pace at all. It's fairly linear. And that's where the cloud storage opportunity really is. For the stuff you need for your business applications, critical applications, you want available. But for the data, which is really more archival, or the backups you've taken, storing them locally is A, expensive, and B, the time it takes for you to recover from that, for example, from tape backups, is much slower as well. So the numbers we've got from analysts tell us that cloud storage is about 80% cheaper than tape storage, for example, and a lot faster to recover from. Now, the second thing which is important to note about the backup solution we propose is that the way we do the backup is fully integrated with the current systems you probably use. If you use Windows Server Backup, Azure Backup, if you use Data Protection Manager, really most of the tools in the market support Azure as a destination for your backup. So it's not a case of us coming in with a set of new tools and processes and going outside the boundaries of what you currently have. We can integrate with your tools and processes and have Azure just be the destination of your backup, and then you let us manage the repository for you. So let's talk about what we actually do for you. So the idea being that we protect your assets with virtually unlimited storage capacity and geo-redundancy. I'll talk about geo-redundancy later on, but the idea really is that you have your data on your premises, and instead of putting it in just one data center, we actually put it in two. So you have 3 copies at all times. So what do we actually do for you? We deploy and configure Azure Backup. We set up your retention policies and redundancy options based on your business requirements. So if you want to have keep daily backups for a month, weekly backups for a year, annual backup for X years, we can work with you on that. We maintain and monitor the backup process for you. So we actually make sure that the backups are being completed as planned and there are no issues between connectivity or anything else. We also make sure the backups you have are actually valid. So we do a quarterly test restore of your databases in isolation and make sure that the database actually comes up and the data is actually valid. And then in case there needs to be a production database restore, we can also help you do that within a predefined SLA. Now with the backup service, because we typically integrate with existing tools, you do not need us for the failovers, or you can actually do the failovers yourself. Because of all the tools expose the the backups within the tools themselves. And our responsibility is to make sure that the backups are being done, they're set up properly, and that they're valid. Of course, where this does become something where we can support our customers is that if you are doing a complex restore, if you're restoring a set of applications with multiple databases, we can definitely work with you on that to make sure the sequencing is correct and the validation of each database is done before you actually bring it back into production, just to ensure that you're not breaking any referential integrity. Now, let's talk about disaster recovery next. And the scenario I've picked here is around site recovery. Now, a lot of our customers, when they think of disaster recovery, it's one of two options. One is I have a backup of my data on a separate site. Now, in that scenario, the backup of the data is great. So you know that the critical data is safe, is backed up, and whether you're using Azure Backup with us or other means, you're protected there. Now, backup gives you a checkpoint, so you know you can recover back to a certain point. But it doesn't answer the question was if your data center is actually compromised in any way, where does the backup actually come up? So you have to find another data center, set up equivalent servers, update your networking, repoint your existing clients to them. So it becomes quite an involved process. So it's great that your data is safe, but you don't really have a destination. So what we built is a service called EBEX Site Recovery, and what the aim is to have intelligent protection at minimal cost. And I'll sort of dive into both of those in the slide. So the way site recovery works is that we built it on top of Azure Site Recovery Services from Microsoft. And what we basically do is we take a set of your servers across one data center, or in this example, multiple data centers, and we set up some agents, and we essentially do a backup of the actual physical resources, the machines, either they're virtual or physical or a VMware, it doesn't really matter. And what we do is we take a backup of those machines and we store them in Azure. Now, what's intelligent about this is because we're storing the backups in Azure in storage, which is fairly inexpensive, the cost of managing this solution over time is minimal. So when you're not using your secondary site, which is Azure, essentially, the cost is fairly minimal. I mean, for us, for our customers, they start at about £100 per server per month. Now, if you compare that with having a secondary data center or a backup data center, then it's quite a significant saving. Now, the intelligent side of this is if a disaster does happen and your data center is actually compromised, we then use those backups to spin up an equivalent set of servers or services in Azure, and then essentially hydrate those services with the data we have so far from you. And then most importantly, we also take care of the networking for you. So we actually update the networking on the new site in Azure. So any clients connecting to your previous data center can now connect to the data center in Azure without having to make any configuration changes. So really, it's quite a strong solution from that perspective. It's highly cost effective. So just a bit more details on what we actually do for you. So we basically use Azure Site Recovery to store copies of critical resources. Now you can decide how many resources you want to cover. You can cover a small set of applications. Say I just only care about critical systems, or you can cover your entire site because it's fairly inexpensive, as I mentioned. It's usually most of our customers look at this and say, well, actually, the whole site just makes more sense as an insurance policy. And in case of site-wide failure, we bring up the other side. So what we're actually responsible for is assessing the recovery set. And this is the set of applications which you consider critical. And there are a set which can be brought up independently, essentially. We deploy and configure these vaults in Azure. We maintain the replications. We make sure that all the systems you're trying to protect are actually being replicated into Azure. And we actively monitor replication to make sure that all the data is being synced. Now we validate your backups by performing quarterly test restores, essentially test failovers, in the same way we do for backup. So we want to make sure that this recovery set you've defined and the processes we've set up for restore can be brought up. So what we do is spin up a private environment, spin up all of our applications and say, please come and take a look just to make sure they're valid. And then we just spin it back down again. Now, we will help you perform your site failovers if you need to do a failover from on-premises into Azure within a predefined SLA. And we'll also support you on failback activity. So another intelligent aspect of the solution is that once you have failed over into Azure, you're not essentially stuck there. Once your data centers come back up, you can actually map the services back down into on-premises and essentially turn off the environment you spun up in Azure. So hopefully that gives you a good understanding of what we can do from a backup and recovery perspective. I also want to talk about how we think of data and how we protect data. So by default, every copy of your data is stored in 3 places in a data center in Azure. What we use is we take that a step further and we use geo-redundant storage. And what that basically gives you is every time we store a single set of a single volume of data on a particular data center, let's say Dublin, there are 2 additional copies created in Dublin, and there are also 3 additional copies created in Amsterdam, and they're constantly synced. What this gives you is whether you are using the EBEX backup service or the EBEX site recovery service, you always have essentially 2 data centers with your data in them. So you essentially have 3 sites, your site and both the data centers from Azure. So I hope that's been a useful session for you. Just to summarize the conversations we've had, so disruptions are common and they're fairly costly, and then we talked about the impacts as well. Our goal is to minimize the impacts and create the kind of solution which you can basically run in an automated fashion, and let us make sure that it's reliable. Let us make sure that we monitor and set up recovery plans for you. Most importantly, let us handle the complexities. You focus on your business and let us focus on managing your backups, managing your failovers, doing the tests, quarterly restores and failovers to make sure that you're valid. Essentially make sure that in case you do need to access those resources, you are protected and the solution you have is being constantly validated. Just the next steps, if you've been interested in what we've shared so far, please do look at our website, ebex.com/microsoft/cloud/services, services. This covers these services plus a few other services we offer to our customers and a little bit more information about what they do. If you are interested in following up on any of them, please do contact us for more information. We also offer what's called a cloud-ready assessment service, and there's more details on our website. This service is really about customers who are looking to move into the cloud and want to understand what it takes for them to get there from a networking perspective, from a data perspective, from a cultural and business perspective as well. Lastly, thank you so much for your time. and I hope you got a lot from the session. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact us. If you have any questions about the sessions themselves, my email address at the bottom right is ajaffrey@ebex.com, and I'd be happy to hear from you. Thank you so much.